Um, it sort of happened in stages. Of course, my whole childhood, I didn't have language for it. Obviously, I didn't know any gay people. I hadn't seen any gay storylines on TV. I just knew what I wanted and what made sense to me. And so I identified with the girl characters in fairy tales. And I used to tell my parents, I wish I were a girl. I think I should, I want to be a girl. And which bothered them a lot. and it wasn't gender dysphoria. It was, I was attracted to boys, and I only thought girls got to do that. So I wish I were a girl. So there was that part of coming out from my earliest, 4 or 5 years old. Then there was in college when I started dating. And so there was that coming out. Like I actually had to come out to a person that I was interested, that I was, and then to my friends that, okay, I'd had this experience or whatever. And so it was sort of out in of the closet there for a year or two. But my dramatic coming out was a spiritual coming out where I was actually at a Pentecostal worship service praying for this thing that I'd been struggling with my whole life to be removed. Of course, I'd prayed that prayer a million times. But this church was known for its healing miracles, so surely here it would have it taken away from me if I just prayed earnestly enough. And the prayer warriors descended upon me, and they're praying, and I'm praying. There's dancing in the spirit and speaking in tongues and all of it. And I'm what they call slain in the spirit. It's this sort of experience where you just sort of just let go and have this sort of altered state of consciousness experience. And in that moment, I received a very clear message. At the time, I attributed it to God. It could have now been, my own subconscious. It could have been the collective unconscious, because there was already a great deal of psychological literature out there that I didn't know about, but you still have access to things like that. But in any case, I got the very clear message. Not even God can heal what is not sick. And that was the turning point, where it wasn't just me telling people about my feelings. It wasn't just me experimenting and seeing if I could get it out of my system. It was me praying and getting an answer, and then embracing that answer. So that was the coming out to myself that changed my life. I couldn't live any other way now. I at the time felt like I was getting a late start. I was about 19, and I'm 51 now. But once I was out, I just couldn't imagine. It is too heavy a burden to live a lie. It is too heavy a burden to have to hide all the time, to always be looking over your shoulder. It is too heavy a burden to try to take a core component of who you are and act like it's a dirty little secret. I did that, in high school or whatever, but once I let that go, you couldn't make me pick that burden back up. So the freedom of living your truth, the freedom of being who you are and celebrating who that is, it has enriched my spiritual life. It has enriched my relationships. There is nothing better than being free, and I would never give that up. I actually went to my first Pride event before I knew the history of Pride. It was maybe 1991, 90 or 91. I went to the Dallas Gay Pride Parade. I believe it was in October. They celebrated it in the fall for a lot of reasons. But I'd heard of these events. I'd seen them on the news, but I'd never been to one. So I'm in Dallas, Texas, and I was amazed. It was the most carnivalesque, amazing thing I'd ever seen in my life. Drag queens and strippers and dancers and bars just filled to overflowing, and bands and singers, and it was just and the gay people just lined the streets, and their allies and curious onlookers. It was just the most wonderful celebration. Now since then, I've been to events in San Francisco, New Orleans, New York, all over Fort Lauderdale, Wilton Manors, but the first was in Dallas, and it was just so wonderful to, for the first time, just celebrate with just countless throngs of people in broad daylight. It was amazing. And then I later learned what all that was about. About the Stonewall riots in 1969, and the gay pride parades the next year or two that followed, and then how that became a way of of celebrating our community and sort of pushing back against all the restrictions that were against us at the time and that people would like for it to be still. And so Pride Tide, Pride Month, Pride Week became an important historical marker. But before I knew the story, I had the experience of being in the street with my people for Gay Pride in Dallas. It was amazing. Well, since my job is really to help people celebrate who they are all the time, discover who they are, discover that they are God's miracle and not God's mistake, that they, just as they are a person of sacred value. So pride is a component of what I do year-round. So there's that. And people come specifically at any times, struggling. They've been told that somehow who they are and who and how they love are somehow deal breakers with God. And so that is I have to sort of unpack that and deconstruct that with people all the time. So it's not limited to Pride Month for me. But every Pride Month, the last Sunday of the month, I do preach a Pride sermon. And we for most of June, we make the liturgy, songs that are specifically affirming of LGBTQ people and that. So we do make the service sort of a celebration service for our community all month long. And then I speak specifically to it in the sermon on that last Sunday of the month. But it's going to pop up in a dozen other sermons throughout the year and one-on-one as needed throughout the year. So I sort of live a Pride life.